Welcome everyone to this presentation and webinar and live demo about getting started with Inline Manual. Thanks for taking your time today to learn more about using it, so I really do appreciate you showing up. I'm Heather McNamee on the customer success team. We also have Marek Sotak here. He's a co-founder and he'll be here to answer any questions you have as well. So please do ask questions as we go, and we'll answer them at the end, if not before, while I'm doing the demo. If we miss anything or you have any questions, I'm happy to show you. And you can also, afterwards, if you're watching this recording, you can contact us at Inline Manual on Twitter, of course, and also support@inlinemanual.com. So if you're getting started and need any help, we're always happy to give you a hand. So what can you do with Inline Manual? We're going to show you step by step how you can build the walkthrough tours and tips and tutorials. And this helps people get started using your application, but you can also be using it as in-app help and self-guided help. And it's another way to keep the conversation going with your users. And over time, you may be interested in learning how to segment and filter which users are seeing which messages. So we'll look at segmentation, and then you can see how your content is actually performing by tracking it with our analytics tools. So we'll look at all these aspects today. Inline Manual is self-funded, and we originally started working on the service in 2012. And it's an amazing, I think it's amazing many web agencies start with the same problem, where you have to build some type of end user documentation for each project, to show users how to build or use the applications you've created. And so we knew there had to be something better than PDFs with screenshots that were getting out of date or screencasts that were difficult or costly to maintain. So that's when I came up with the idea of Inline Manual. So that's really the background of it, and I hope that's something you guys can probably relate to as well. Let's look at how our customers are using Inline Manual now. This is the welcome screen at TeamGate. You can see they're starting off a guided tour. And this is step one for them. It's a typical example showing this kind of seamless branded design you can get with Inline Manual. They fully customize the look and feel to have it match the entire application. They use these walkthroughs to show people the main sections of their application. So we have to remember that while users are expecting that the applications are intuitive or easy to use, there's a lot of terminology that they need to get familiar with. And that's, partly your experience right now as you're getting to use Inline Manual. Every software has different types of kind of concepts to get your head around. And this is how Fresh Sales does it. Again, a totally different look and feel in this case. And they've decided to almost have like click-through welcome screens. So they're using this pattern where they have a welcome screen for initial users, showing them some ideas or concepts. And this is also nice to continue in the long term. Later on, early on, it's a first-time user experience, and later on, you can be showing existing users new features or opportunities and offers. So it's a good way to start and a good way to continue. In the lower left-hand corner, you can see here, they've placed their widget down here where people can always get help and access those topics. So you can place that widget anywhere on the screen. Here's another example from this time's Sales Seek, showing again a totally different look and feel. And you can see that you can embed video in your tours. And again, this is another reason why you may want to show a concept that's maybe something that's not apparent in the UI, so you need to get some idea across. That's a good time to use video. And they've also got that kind of orientation click-through, so they want to show you the integrations that are available here. So you can completely style this within your, across your whole system, so everything can look the same, or you can do it even step by step. You can add in inline CSS if you like. Here's Fresh Desk. It's another example of a nice welcome screen. I love that they've included a photograph of the CEO. It's a nice welcome. People love to see faces. There's no question about that. And again, they're using the video embedded here, maybe getting a concept across that's not apparent in the UI, but they are using click-by-click walkthroughs to have a guided tour of things in the UI. Here we can see there's an element that's highlighted, and to take the next action, they can click the element, or they can skip the tour, and they can basically begin to get a task done as they're getting familiar with the application. Here's Crunch boards, and you can see that they've got that welcome screen again, so starting to see a common pattern here. They also have the widget placed, in this case, on the right-hand side of the screen, and you can customize that completely, again, how you want it to look. And when you click on that widget, it opens up the list of articles, and these topics may do a couple things. They may launch a tour. They may also just be an article that shows up in the right-hand side itself. And the nice thing is, if someone has dismissed a tour, maybe they said, oh yeah, I'll do that another time, they can come back here and get that tutorial again when they're ready. If you've been using Inline Manual now, you've seen probably a message from me. So we're using this, and just to give you an example, it's a way for us to send messages, especially to people who've just recently registered for the site. So this isn't going out to everybody, it's going out to people who are newer on the site. We want to invite them in for this first time webinar. On the right-hand side, you can see our widget as well, where we're listing release notes. So this is another way you can use the articles on the site. So maybe you want to think now about how you can use Inline Manual. A lot of our clients start by using Inline Manual to engage users and increase conversions. They're really focused on that first-time user onboarding experience, auto-launching those tutorials for first-time users. And later on, they actually start to realize they can use it to support users, meaning almost sometimes even staff training and giving people help and context. The nice thing is that, especially if you've done any training, and I've done lots of training and taught lots of software in my life, you bring people out of their context into a perfect training situation, everything works, they get back to their computers and they don't know what they're doing. So the nice thing is, with the Inline Manual tours, people can get a job done, get a task done while they're doing something and learn, and it's a bit more effective. And you can also even see, of course, that they've gotten their tours done, and it's a nice way to blend that into your training. So let's look at an example application. I've shown you some of the things that our clients have done, but I want to show you a demo application because I can open it up and show you how it actually works. So here we can see we have the widget showing up in the lower right-hand corner, and hopefully you can see that okay. Bear with me one second. Okay, you should be able to see that. And the widgets, when I click on it, pops up and I get a list of articles here. Now, some of these may be articles like this one here. Some of them may be click-by-click tours. And so let's click on this welcome message. In this case, we've got a got it link, so I'm going to let people dismiss it. I've just dismissed it. And I've also got this prompt that says, okay, let's do this. And if you notice, when I clicked on that, this popover appeared, and I'm pointing to the element I want them to click on the screen. So the popover is placed here on the right, and the user clicks on it, and it advances to the next step. You'll notice the screen went dark, and this backdrop draws people's attention to what we have highlighted. So they can't click anything else except for what is selected as the element, or the trigger in this case. So once we click on that, we've been redirected, if you didn't notice, we've been redirected to a new page, and that was partly the action that I took, but we can also make sure that redirection happens by prompting with a URL. And in this case, I've highlighted something just like I did before, but I don't want anyone to be able to take any action there. So I put a cover over that. So sometimes you want to really lock down your tours. You don't want people to, get off track, because you just need to show them a few things first. So we'll click Next is the way to advance that now. In this case, I've highlighted multiple elements on the screen. So this is a kind of choose your own adventure moment. People can choose, maybe you want to give people multiple options of things that they can do. And you could even do some branching. So we'll actually be able to show you that you could say if people select one of, say 4 different options, you can respond with one of 4 different steps, basically. They may not want to choose any of those things either, so we have another type of trigger. We have a button trigger available as well. So we're giving people some options here by having multiple triggers on this one step. And finally, ta-da, you're done. I think it's always nice to finish off with a clear, a clear message that you've accomplished something. If you know a lot about how people learn, they tend to remember how things start and how things finish. This is a nice way to remind people of what they've done. So we're finished there. And let's look at that article that we have in the widget. We've got our release notes. This is sort of like what we're, I suppose if we're sending out some type of message saying, hey, we're going to be able to do something new here. Just like our content that we have for each of those popovers, you can actually edit this. I'll show you how to edit this in the WYSIWYG editor. Put in any kind of content you want, and you can put in buttons like this. And if we click on this, it should take us to a tour, but it's not happening, is it? So that's what we're going to build today. We're going to build a tour that is launched from here. Let's take this out step by step. So the first thing we're going to do at the start of the tutorial is redirect people to a specific page and welcome them to the tour, tell them what they can do and opt into it. Then we'll prompt them to select a specific element to take an action so they can complete their task. This is mainly what you'll be doing when you build your tours. That's actually the bread and butter of all of your tours will be doing this. And then we'll give them a da-da, welcome, you've done that. And we'll add that step finally to our knowledge base article in the widget so it links to the tutorial, and we'll be able to round that out. Okay, before we can even get started authoring, the first thing you need to do, and actually the only thing you need to do, is install the authoring tool. So even if you haven't done anything on your website, as long as you install the authoring tool, you can begin creating tours and tutorials right now. If you go to Help and Support, in the second step, click Install the Authoring Tool. It takes you over to the Chrome extension installation page here, and it's very easy to install. Now you're probably wondering, I'm guessing, if you need Chrome for authoring, do your users need it to access the tours, articles, and tutorials? And in fact, no. The Chrome extension is just for authoring, and the player actually is installed as a script on your site, so that gets installed. That's basically a few lines of code, and once that's installed in your site, the player will play in any browser. So just so you understand, it's the authoring tool you need to get started. So let's build it. Okay, go over back to our demo site. I'll close the widget here and open up the authoring tool. You can see the icon up there. Here's a list of all the topics I've created earlier. And what we'll look at is adding a new topic. And the default there is walkthrough, and that just happens to be exactly what we need. And we're going to be creating a new feature tour. So by default, it's selected to be in the organization that I'm working from right now. We do want this new feature tour to be visible in the widget. So we're going to keep all these defaults public for now, or defaults for now. And we'll create a topic. All right, now we'll create our first step. The first step we've been seeing in some examples is the welcome step, and we can use the step template if you want to see how these look. This is just a way of starting out with some HTML and a default image. You'll see here in the source, you can replace that image with anything you like, with your own CSS, and make it look any way you like. So you've seen some examples already from some of our clients. And we'll be expanding step templates in one of our upcoming releases. So this is going to be great for if you want to try this out and see how it works. And here we go. So one of the things I promised was having people sort of redirect to a specific page. Oh, you know what? I think I'll hold off on that just so you can see. We'll have people click on the next button to let them get started. That's the trigger that we've chosen in this case. And now we'll add a second step. So in this step, we want to prompt people to now, I'm being very explicit here. It depends on, for you, in your case, how detailed you want the steps to be. Just click Assign Element, and I'm going to say Click Forms. So this is very, I guess I'm almost making more steps for myself, but it depends on what you need to do. If you need to have a lot of steps to explain to someone where it is exactly, it's good to walk people through all of those steps. But I'll show you in a second how to redirect people to get them to their point quicker. I'll show you what that means. Okay, I'm going to assign element here, and the default is to click. So make sure I have my click trigger here at each step. Okay, now when they click here, it will redirect. And this is what I meant about the redirect step. On step 4, we're going to do as we've done before, assign an element to prompt the user. And in this case, it will be a click action. But what we'll do differently this time is to get the path of where we are. So this means that no matter what, however things go, if something goes pear-shaped, if they do make it to this step, it will redirect them to here. So I could have actually started my tours with this path, and that means, you know, people can just be redirected to exactly where they want to be. Again, depends on how much orientation you think that user needs at that stage. Maybe they just want to get something done, but sometimes you may actually want to walk people through. Now we've got a few steps, and I've got my click action advancing to the next step. Final step, I'll select the element, submit button. Okay. Now, let's see how this looks. So I can get a kind of a preview in in the authoring tool, and I'll preview the step just to see how it looks. And if I click there, I can see, yes, it is advancing, but it's obviously obscured and I can't really see very well. I don't think that's going to work for me. So what I'm going to do, starting with step 4 here, is change the placement of that. First thing I'm going to do is move the authoring tool over to the side, and then change the placement of the element over to the right. And change step 5. I can change the element over to the bottom right, so it won't obscure. And step 6, now submit, I'll move the authoring tool back over and change it over to the left. So this is just to show you have some control over where things are positioned and how you can move things around on the screen to make it a little bit easier for yourself. So now our tour is complete. Fabulous. But we haven't finished yet, because in the release notes, we have to link to it from here. So this is a button that I created using this button link. It creates basically puts in a button in HTML, and you can edit that, change how it looks, and we'll double click on it and change where the text that it says, what it's going to do. And then it's going to link to a topic, and in this case it's going to be the new feature tour. And save. When you make changes in your, in any of the content as you're editing Inline Manual, it can take a little while for the changes to take effect. I'm pretty confident I've changed that. So even if I'm in another browser, here I am, just to see how it looks. I think if I go to Inline Manual and go to my release notes, it's not appearing yet. So I have to do a hard refresh, Command R, and sometimes it just takes a few minutes before the tour is actually going to start working. So we'll give that a few seconds. Maybe I will try an incognito browser actually. Fun. Okay, so there it is appearing. It just took a few minutes of refreshing, I guess. And so here you can see the steps that we just created, and it's telling us, okay, now we can do these steps and what to kind of advance through this tour. So it's a very basic, this isn't a real application, so nothing happened there, but it's just a very basic tour to give you an idea. So let's just recap what we built so far. We built a walkthrough which responds to user actions on buttons or triggers. And that's basically the bulk of what you'll be doing as you're building with Inline Manual. Then we added a link to that walkthrough in an article in the widget. So there's quite a lot you can put into that widget. And actually, let's look at how the topics are arranged. Here we are. We can see everything that's available to us, everything that we've created in here. And we have a search tool. We can search by title in this authoring tool. But you may notice, as you are probably very observant, that I've got some content here that's out of date. I want to get rid of that topic, and I may even want to reorder the content that I've just created. By default, it's just popped itself there on the bottom. I want that to be up at the top. So we'll go edit those in the site configuration. We'll go add and arrange topics by logging into inlinemanual.com and going to select your site and go to the topics list. So one way to think about sites with Inline Manual is that they're containers of topics. You can have multiple sites. You can have sites that are your dev site versus your live or production site. And you can actually share topics across those sites. So once I take this topic here and remove it, I'm just going to click an X there, it's still going to be available for me to use on other sites. I may want to do that, for example, if I want to test some content on one site and then put it onto the live site. So that's kind of a nice thing to know. The other thing you can do is reorder topics. So just by putting them in a different order here, that reflects how they're ordered in the widget. Another thing you might want to do is simply hide topics altogether. I think it makes sense with the new feature tour that since they access that through the release notes, I'm going to hide this in the widget. So the reason I have it hidden is so that it doesn't appear in the list of topics, but it's still available to be accessed from the release notes. So if it wasn't there, if it was removed, that wouldn't trigger the tour. So let's see, I'm going to put my how-to example, or my welcome message, I guess, will be at the top now. And again, because it takes a little bit of time for refreshing, it may take a little bit before we see the changes take effect. So we'll come back to that in a second. So let's see something else you might like to change. You probably want to change as well the design or the look and feel, and we'll do that in our dashboard here in Sites under Settings and go to Player Appearance. So there's some basic tools. If I click on these various elements, it'll allow me to change maybe what this trigger icon looks like. This is a launcher icon, and I can click on the buttons and it will take me to where I can change the colors of those as well. These changes will take a few minutes to take effect, the same as the others, as I'm clearing my cache, etc. Another thing you can do is put in your custom CSS. So you can completely change how your site looks by putting your CSS in here. If you have a designer working on your team, you'll be able to do that. And as well, we have the widget here. We can change the way that looks. I don't know, I'm going orange today, so it must be just an orange kind of day, I guess. It feels kind of autumny, I guess, suppose. So The next thing you'll probably want to change after you've seen some of the design things is the default text. So back at our demo, in the lower right-hand corner, you can see you've got Inline Manual set there for default. It's probably not going to suit you in all cases. So we're going to change that under Player Languages. And believe it or not, you're creating a localization. This is about as easy as it is. In fact, actually, if I go back a step, you can add an English translation there. And we will change this to tutorials. So this is also where you can put in a footer if you would like to put a message for users. This is also where, if you don't want to use the same sort of wording, instead of end, you may want to say finish. This is where you would make some of those changes. So we'll save. And you have a lot of control here as well well, actually, we're going to wait and talk about segments and automation next. So this is giving you some idea of how you can do some customization. I'm going to just check here and see. Yep, the CSS has come through, and you can see how it looks now. All right, so next thing we're going to look at is optimization. So this is where I suppose, say for example, we have that welcome message and we have this new feature tour. It may be that we want to show one message for new users. That's a welcome to them. And then we may want to show the release announcement for the users who've been using us for a while, and we want to show them what's new. And we don't want to kind of double up on those messages. So let's look at how segmentation works. And we're going to log into the dashboard now. And I know when some of you registered, there are a few questions about this, so I'm sure you're keen to see how this works. Now, this is assuming that with our configuration that we've set up, we've already set up something called people tracking. And I'm briefly going to explain that to you, actually. We can actually see, bear with me a second. When we have people tracking set up, what this allows us to do is pull in information from your application. You'll be able to see, for example, what plan your users are on or what roles they may have. And this type of information is specific to your application. And those are the types of things that you'll be able to segment on. The defaults here, for example, like created and last seen, is another way you'll be able to segment those messages as well. So this is an example of seeing the level of detail you can get about a specific user. And just so you know that everything I'm showing you here with analytics and tracking is optional. You can disable it. And you can also full control over your own installation of Inline Manual, running that on your own server rather than using inlinemanual.com. Okay, so let's look at let's look at our people tracking right now. We actually have one user imported right from our sample application, and let's look at our segments. I'm going to delete this segment. I'll just edit this segment to show you what this looks like. So, let's see. Maybe I'll just make a new one. So we're going to have a new user example and create a rule that the user has been created, and it is less than, I just want to double check my own notes in my slide. All right, sorry. So we're making a segment that someone's been created less than 1 week ago. So someone's been just created, or new user's just been created so recently that they're probably only going to get this message now. And once we have that new segment created, when we go over to automation, we can set a new message, the auto launcher, to select a topic. You can see it's already created. The welcome message is for actually, not to confuse things, we'll have the new feature tour that we just created. We'll have that for everyone but new users. Maybe we have a reason, like I said, not just show new users the same thing our existing users are seeing. So now we've got an auto launcher, and it'll play that one time for everyone but new users. So sorry if I made that a little confusing. We have multiple segments here. This segment here is people who were created, let's say, greater than 1 week ago. So those are maybe not the new users, which was maybe change those around. So hopefully that's given you some idea of just a very basic way of setting up the segments and automated messages for new users. Right, so I sort of skipped ahead. Now, after you've been using Inline Manual for a little while, you'll be able to have some insight into how people are making it through your steps and where they're kind of running into trouble, or they're getting so far and then stopping. And you can see that for most people, they're getting up to step 5 of this particular tour and then they're skipping out. They don't need the other steps. We may look at that and say, maybe we don't need those last steps, or maybe there's a way to condense or bring that information together. And we're still giving people, we'll still be able to give them that sense of satisfaction. There is something funny, like I said, about finishing something. You want to have this feeling like, yes, I've done that, rather than a dissatisfied feeling of, oh, I left something undone. So that could be, some way you can improve. What about now? I've been giving you some ideas by looking at the clients that we have, the examples that you've seen. And I've shown you a demo. I've actually built a few things with you. I wonder if you have some ideas now of what you'd like to build with Inline Manual, and if you've formed any questions. So we'll start taking questions now. And as we do that, I want to give you a kind of a pop quiz and see if you remember what you've seen. You saw how we built tours with no coding required, although we didn't touch on it, but developers can extend this tool. You can update the content quickly with the authoring tool, so you don't need to contact anybody to have something change. You can just log in and make the changes yourself. And then you saw you can auto launch those messages as well. And you can actually optimize quite a bit. And let's look at this client site. Now that you're looking again at a finished example, you've seen this now, I bet you can figure out how you would create a welcome message like this. And what content would you create? And if you guessed a walkthrough, you're right. You create a walkthrough with you're basically following through steps and having people advance through some kind of a presentation. And that's what they've done in this case. And you notice the background is dimmed. If you remember how to fix that, that would be something I didn't show you. I can actually show you that is how to use a backdrop. So go back into the authoring tool. And in the new feature tour, we go over to step 2. And in the backdrop tab, we can turn that on. And that's dimmed everything so that people can see what to click. And the other thing we can do, we go to the next step here, is indeed we can turn on the backdrop. And I mentioned before about using the cover, which I mentioned you can lock down so people can't click anything. In this case, we would have to then put in a next button, for example. But that would be a way you could really control where people are going and what they're doing. So let's go back. So I had to take a chance to show you that. I'm sorry I skipped that earlier. So that would have been a very unfair question in this pop quiz. So hopefully now you've seen some things of what you can do, and maybe you feel like you're ready to start. Let's see what questions you have now. So someone's asked, if I've created a topic, how do I add it to a widget where I want to have the walkthroughs collected? Where can I design and alter the widget? So if you created the topic, which is in, let's go back here. Okay, so here's a list of all the topics that I've created that are assigned to this site. So if we go back to our list of topics here, just to make it very clear, these are the topics that have been assigned to this site. These are all the topics that I have access to in my account here. So I could possibly have multiple sites. Like I may have this other site here, and I can take that new feature tour that I created from the other, let's see, actually, this is a sort of a free version. There we go. So I can add that new feature tour I just created and put that into another site. So that's how you could use topics within various sites. I don't know. I hope that sort of answered your question. Where can you design and alter a widget was the other half of your question. And that's where you would go to the settings. And here you can do two things. One is change the look of it. You can change the background color here, or you can put in your custom CSS. You can position it. We saw some examples where people had positioned it to the right middle, which is over here. And we saw somebody in the left bottom, which is maybe down here. You can change the way that looks. And you can also change the text of that widget. I'm in a different site here. I'll just go back. Sorry for jumping around so much. We'll say here, if you want to change the look of what the text actually says, we can change that under settings, player languages. So another question was, is it possible to automatically show a welcome screen, welcome journey, or auto launcher to users visiting our page for the first time without implementing people tracking? Yeah, Merrick, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. So let me answer it. This is going to be a little bit more technical because we need actually the people tracking for the auto launchers because we need at least something unique about the user, which means that it won't launch again and again for the users, and we need to pair them together. So what you can do on your side is that you can basically implement your own sort of, let's say, a unique cookie, but this will be something that you will have to ask your developers. We can take it afterwards if you will have more questions about this, but there will be some sort of like a implementation needed on your side. Or if you want to handle the whole logic behind this, you can launch the topic via JavaScript one-line code. So these are the options for that.
Excellent. Really good. Okay. I mean, it sounds like this is one of those examples we didn't touch on, which is how can you extend Inline Manual? That's one way you can. We have another question here about creating a walkthrough step without a pop-up message user prompt attached to it. So for instance, this person would like to highlight an element using a backdrop and make the user guess that they have to click on it rather than explicitly writing it. No one wants to be told to click here 8 times in a row. Totally agreed with you on that. I sort of, as I was creating the tour, I was like, this seems a little bit redundant. So let's go back here. I'm going to close the authoring tool. And what we can see here are some other examples. We'll look at this how-to example. There's no welcome screen. It says, click here, forms to get started. And I've got to click here to get started. What I'm going to do is edit this, and I'm going to edit it so it jumps right into that step and redirects the user from here, okay? So let's look at that. I'll open up the authoring tool. And in this how-to example, I'm going to delete step 1. We don't need it. I'm going to delete step 2. We don't need it. I'm going to bring people right into here. They've already been told what they are going to be able to do. And in this case, we will go to miscellaneous. And I've already done this in this case. I've got this redirect right here. And this will redirect them directly. You did say, oh, you don't want a pop-up message. You don't want this popover at all. Okay. Merrick, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, so this is something that we have been asked for, and it is actually on our features list, or actually on our future features list. It's on our roadmap, but we don't have it yet. But we are actually thinking about the option that you can disable the popover, like you are saying. It's actually redundant when you have to just say click here, do this, do that, if it's like very obvious. And we will be also adding, let's say that you can highlight it with a border and stuff like that. So we don't have it right now, but it's on our features list.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. I thought there were maybe something I was missing. I'm also going to show you whilst I'm here, I'm drawing someone's attention in a backdrop to a form element. But we can only, I suppose, I'm going to use the eye here and show you what we actually have selected. It highlights in green. And I'm going to use this expander tool to make it a broader selection. So I'm getting the label as well. All right, so I hope that's answered your question. I appreciate you guys with your questions. Let's look at some of the things you asked as well before you even showed up. And you wanted to see how to use tooltips. Okay, so I did forget to cover that. I will cover that. You want to see how to get started. There's a lot of new concepts. I appreciate that. And hopefully you've got some of the terminology familiarized yourself a little bit more. And you've seen how to create a pop-up article for new users so they get an overview of the help articles. And that's in the widget. I hope that's clear. The last question was about hosting and data storage. Merrick, did you want to talk at all just briefly about hosting and data storage before I go back to show tooltips?
Yeah, so our servers are in London. We are using a company called Linode, and basically they are hosting the servers for us. And that is where all our infrastructure is as well. We have plans for the next year to move to the Google Cloud. And usually we are being asked about the hosting and data storage because of, let's say you have different, let's say policies in different countries, let's say in Switzerland or Germany. And we are also thinking that you might want to have, let's say, a self-hosted analytics. So that's something that we will be working on in the future. And there's also an option that I would like to mention that if you want to host your own player, you can do that already. So you can download the player itself and host it on your infrastructure, but that will give you only the content. And if you still want to use the analytics and people tracking and automation and so on, you will need to actually connect to our cloud, which sits in London.
Okay, that's fair enough. Thank you. Hope I wasn't misleading before when I mentioned that, so that's very helpful. So finally, let's look then at how to use tooltips. So tooltips are a type of content. We'll just save that. They're a type of content you can create. So in a case where you may want to let people sort of decrypt a user interface, it could be that there's a new UI that you've added. Maybe there's some new screen that you've added to your application that didn't exist before. And so that's what we're going to do is add a tooltip. So here we go. I'm going to create an example tooltip. And you'll notice that the temp or the UI looks a little bit different. When we add a step, we don't have the same options as when we're creating steps. The launchers are placed differently. So let's assign the launcher to something we want to explain. I've highlighted the launcher. I've assigned the launcher here. It's showing up here in the top right. Maybe I would like to show it on the left. And we can also then assign the step. So they have two placements of these things. Assign the step to show up here. Now, the reason we might want to do that is because this will launch the tooltip, and the step will display the popover. Okay. Okay. Sort of running low on ideas. Sorry about that. So this is an idea of, gives you an example of what you might use a tooltip for. There's some options in launcher visibility so that you can be visible, the tooltip can be visible when this is active, or we can make it always visible so that the question mark will always be there. You can also change from a question mark to under the launcher settings. Maybe you don't want a question mark, maybe you need to alert people, and you may want to change that to something else for some reason. Yep, so maybe an exclamation point. You can also slightly tweak the position of this if you have some reason why it's not displaying the right way for you. If you want to move it aside. And you can also have it point to some other place. So I'm sort of giving you a really detailed look at this at this panel. However, we just happen to have a blog post about this if you would like to see and get a kind of a walkthrough of this on our blog. And after this recording, I'll send you this tutorial we've written that'll talk you through creating those tooltips and why you would do that. The nice thing is you can also create launchers just like that to jump into specific steps in an existing walkthrough as well. Okay, so let's see if we have any more questions before we close out today. Good question. What does active exactly mean? Merrick, do you want to answer that question? What does active mean?
Yes, I can answer it. It's a little bit confusing. So what it means is that like Heather showed you, there are 3 options, right? Or actually 4 options. So never means that it's actually disabled. It will never show up. Always means that it will be always there, no matter what the status of the topic of the actually the whole walkthrough is, or the tooltips topic type. And active and inactive. So active means that someone, or it has been basically launched, the topic itself has been launched. So that means, let's say, if the user already clicked on one of these tooltips and there is one bubble appearing, or if they, let's say, launch it from the widget itself, or it has been automatically launched in case of, let's say, walkthroughs, it will not show, if it's set to active, it will not show if the basically topic is not playing, it's not showing any bubbles. And if you set it to inactive, it will do the opposite. So basically it will show when the topic has not been activated, so the user didn't activate it, let's say, through the widget again, or they didn't click on any of these launchers, so yeah, I think that's the explanation, I would say.
Cool. All right.
If it makes sense.
All right. I think what I'll do is set it to active. Set it to always show, I should say. I'm going to refresh and close the authoring tool. And what you can see here is that this is now always visible. So it's showing up all the time. Okay. And the other thing is, I'll show you what happens if I change this to just active. All right, going to go back to my example tooltip, and I'm going to change this to active. So it's not going to always be visible. It's only going to be visible when it's active. So now we'll.
You can Heather, if I can just interrupt you, you can actually show it like you already showed it now. I mean, without waiting for the player to reload. If you open up the authoring tool.
I was trying to get that one to disappear. Okay. Oh, the authoring tool. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm right there with you, Mark. Sorry.
Okay, perfect. So if you just close this bubble, then you will see that the launcher will disappear.
Okay.
Right. So you can see that it disappeared.
There we go. And then to make it active, since it's not active, we can refresh. It should disappear, right? Yeah. And we can make it active by clicking on that item in your tutorials list or your widget list. So say, for example, you had something that said, show me how, or show tips, then you can have maybe even multiple steps in that example. So you can have them display when they're made active. I hope that's clear. Is that helpful? I suppose haven't seen another question about it, so I think that's clear. Thank you very much for coming along today. We will send along this recording, and we will send along the answers to the questions for, well, actually, we've answered pretty much every question, actually, so I think we won't need to send along the questions. If you're ready to get started, like I said, after you've watched this, go and install the authoring tool. You can start to create content right now. You can log in to Inline Manual. You could browse to actually any website in the world and start creating tours. The thing is, they won't play until you install that little script on your site, and then you can basically get started. So if you want to see where you get that script, over in Sites, in your settings and player installation, you'll see there's a script here that goes just before the body tag of your website. Depends on who's managing it for you. If you're doing this yourself, you put that into the source code of your application or your site, and then the player will work. And this is connected to this particular site. So you can have, like I said, your dev site, your production site, and you can have 2 different players and 2 different sites, and everything will work very smoothly. Okay, so of course I've said it's smooth and easy, but I'm sure you're going to have questions. You can contact us, support@inlinemanual.com. You can find all the tours and tutorials, I should say, on help.inlinemanual.com of any of the things you've seen today. So thank you very much for coming. And Merrick, was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that's it. Thank you very much for the webinar.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it.